going on, guys? Matt at Middleton Motorsports here. Another episode of Behind the Tune. Today on the dyno, something really cool. So I'm going to flip the camera around. We're going to take a look. So, 1968 Charger. Super nice car. High-end restoration on this car. Rotisserie style restoration on the body for sure. You get underneath this thing and it is painted top and bottom. Brakes, suspensions, got some Caltrax. Before I get under the hood, I just want to make sure I'm covering everything else. But a very stock appearing car, kind of an unassuming Charger. Obviously, you know, super nice paint job on it though. You can kind of maybe see something red poking out from underneath the hood. So we'll get up on the deck here. So Gen 3 Hemi. So instead of the old 440 or 426 or 440, this is a Gen 3 Hemi. This is a 426 DSR Performance build. It's their camshaft. It is a Whipple 3-liter. I do not believe the heads are ported. So it's Hellcat heads. So it's a newer style block and heads from my understanding. Cranked rods, pistons, DSR cam, the Whipple, and obviously a bunch of other stuff going on here. You know, it's got a bigger radiator, kind of real high-end pro touring build. Fuel system, I believe, is just I think it's a Hellcat style in tank deal, and the stock ECU is controlling it. This is also an 8 HP, so it also has a Hellcat automatic transmission in it, which is super cool, and that's being controlled by a PCS separate standalone controller that the two talk to each other over a network to get back and forth RPM and torque information and stuff like that to provide shift points and shift timing and all that stuff. Running it on pump gas, and so I got 90. I did put some 93 in it. We got that good 93 just down the road from us. So I got that. I did put about 10 gallons of that in it. He delivered it to me pretty low on fuel, so I was able to go over there and get about 10 gallons of the good stuff, the good pump gas. It does have, along with the Whipple 3.8, it's got a big, I believe that's a 130 millimeter throttle body, 132, something like that. Big 5-inch tube. Obviously not a super ideal situation without an air baffle on it. But he's not really racing this car. This car came to me, so he bought the car. I'll kind of back up a little bit. He bought the car pretty much completely finished. This is a guy that's local to us. He owns a business down the street from us here. And he bought the car nearly completed, and he had it at another couple shops for some tuning. And there was some falling out there between, not him, but there was some other stuff going on. And basically, he came to me with a basic Elephant tune in it. So a Elephant would be the 1,000 horsepower crate engine that Dodge offers. That's what the ECU that's in it that's controlling it. So it's a crate engine ECU from Mopar Performance, and it had the Elephant base file in it. So I'm working off that. Obviously, with the cam and the bigger blower, some changes had to be made there to suit, especially the camshaft, to suit the camshaft. Volumetric efficiency changes that the camshaft makes. I don't think I'm missing anything else under here. I know there's kind of a lot to look at with this car, with this engine. Super cool build. Couple things about the tuning. So, seeing about 16 pounds of boost, 3.5 upper, stock size lower pulley, and that's just what the Whipple's producing. I think it's a little aggressive for pump gas, but we'll get to some tuning tricks that I'm doing with this in a minute. Maybe I'll do the Dyno Pull, the last Dyno Pull. I'll film it, and then we'll go over some of the tuning stuff I'm doing to kind of compensate for that pulley, because it's pretty aggressive for pump gas, and we went in knowing that, and I kind of discussed that with the owner before we even put it on the dyno, that it was this blower, this pulley combination, 10-to-1 compression, and he did want to be able to run pump gas in it. I said, well, we're going to have to be really conservative and soft on the tune-up, because it's leaning on stuff pretty hard, even with a forged engine like this. There's just limitations on pump gas, and these Hemis are pretty timing sensitive when it comes to pump gas. They don't need a lot of timing, and sometimes when you kind of go over that knock threshold, you end up with really, really low timing, like 0 to 2, 3 degrees in some areas. And it just gets kind of out of control where it's just, there's no point of having all that boost if you're pulling the timing down that far. These cars, once you get the timing under, 5, 6 degrees, it's kind of like you get too much boost on it. If it's just not going to take it and the knock sensors are pulling the timing out of it, it's time to drop the boost down. So that's kind of the situation we're in, but I did some other things with the tune, kind of along with how Dodge strategy works anyway, and we'll get to that in a second. Numbers, so where I'm at so far, 868, 783 torque. This is just basically where it like to be. Fueling, we're about 11.5 to 1, 0.79 lambda I'm commanding. Revving this thing out to 6,800 RPM. DSR, I spoke with one of the gentlemen there. He told me this engine was good to 7,000. So the limiter is at 7,000. Shift points are going to come in right about 6,700 is where I got the transmission to set up to shift. So right around just past peak torque. You can see it's peaking right about there. I figured that was a good spot. Again, this is not going to be a drag race car. This is a street cruiser, and he was after drivability. When it came to me, the throttle was extremely sensitive. Some of the stuff with that big throttle body and the VE tables weren't adjusted quite right. Obviously, again, with that camshaft and having that different supercharger on it, some changes had to be made. So this is where we're at so far. This is pretty much where I'm going to be at. This run was after about a 30-minute cool down. I was helping a couple of the guys out with a alignment over on the other side of the shop, and I had the fans going on it. So this is a pretty strong pull. I think this is going to be our number. I'm going to do one more pull for you guys, though. We'll do one more. And I don't know if I'll hit this. The car's been cooling down maybe 15 minutes. It's a little humid. We're getting into the humid months here in the summer. And the blowers like to heat soak just sitting here in the dyno. So I don't try to cheat anything, but I like being consistent with my my manifold temperatures and my intercooler temperatures and stuff like that, and coolant temp. So still running a stock thermostat in this car, so I am doing pulls on the hotter side for what I would like to see if I was putting something together, but again, not a huge deal. I'm doing pulls in 195 to 198 on the coolant temperature, and just because that's what it's going to see on the street. So again, I'm not trying to cheat something where we're going to be out of range of what he's going to see driving it around on a hot summer day. So I'm going to put the camera down. We're going to set it over there next to the dyno. We're going to film one last pull for you guys here, and then we'll go over the data log. I'll go over some of the other stuff that I did in the tune to kind of compensate for that pulley combo on this thing, and then the boost we're seeing. And this one will be wrapped up. I might take it out for another drive tomorrow. I got a couple other cars sitting out there. I got a Vet and another Mustang to do, so we're kind of stacking up here. Obviously, this is the full swing of the summer, and we are extremely busy. So working late tonight to get this one done. So let's watch one more pull here, and we'll see what we make. All right, looks like we backed that other pull up almost on the line, right on the money. Real close anyways. Camera centered up here. 867, I'm 868. And 781 on the torque. So pretty much the same exact pull. Yeah, temperatures were very, very similar to that pull, maybe a smidge hotter. Maybe why I had a little bit less down low, but again, that's kind of splitting hairs on something like this. Pretty much the same up top. You can see both runs overlaid each other. So like I said, that's where we're at. Taking this thing out, just about to 6,800. Like I said, I got the shift points on the trans set. Right around 6,700. I kind of figured that's where this thing would be with this blower. These Whipple 3 liters like RPM, and they get real efficient up top. And didn't get the specs on the camshaft on this. I didn't ask him. He just said custom grind from them, so he didn't seem like he wanted to share that information with us. Probably something that's, if I had to guess, something that's in the low 230s, mid 230s on the intake, and 250 on the exhaust is typically where these guys will grind stuff like this for moderately sized cams on the 426. And just based on how it idles, definitely has some chop to it, but it's not overly aggressive. So I don't think it's too overly huge of a cam. But yeah, real nice power curve. And so what I was doing with this thing, look at the data log, you can kind of see how it's a little bit soft down in the mid-range. I'm actually not opening the throttle till full wide open, till about here. It was just so timing sensitive down here with this pulley combination. You know, we were coming in right off the bat at, 2,500 RPM with 13, 14 pounds of boost. And I could get maybe 2 degrees of timing in it down there. So actually what I was doing was, I was working the throttle down. So it's really only about half throttle here, even though you're to the floor. I just found that was a little bit safer. There was just so much knock happening between 2 and about 4,000 RPM, kind of in this range. I just softened it with the throttle. Some of the Dodge strategies do that anyway, where they're not opening the throttle till wide open, up until 4,000, 3,800 RPM or so. I could also have done it with the supercharger bypass, which is part of Dodge's on the Hellcats. They will, as you roll into the throttle, it'll actually get the throttle body wide open by about 3,800 RPM. And maybe about half, 3/4 throttle on the pedal. The supercharger bypass won't shut completely until you get closer to wide open. So that's another strategy Dodge uses. That's a little bit more complicated to do. The throttle is easier to do, and it nets the same result. Kind of a nice linear power curve. So we can take a look at that. We'll take a look at the data log, and I'll just kind of show you guys what I'm talking about there. Jump in the car here. So this car's got, obviously your typical pro touring. It's got the Dakota digital dash. Kind of cool. It's got the the modern Mopar shifter tied into the factory console. Super cool build. This is definitely one of the cooler perks of my job. Cooler parts of my job is doing stuff like this. These really these higher end builds like this. You get a lot of money in something like this to put something like this together. So the other thing I need to do, and if you guys are kind of looking at this closely, is you can see my speed is way out of control. There's something in the trans controller I have to get with that guy and get some software from him, because there's something not programmed right in the trans controller, so that the speed is actually reading double what the car is actually going. So you can see that pull 246 miles an hour was probably going about 130 miles an hour, so we're at 125. So if I look at the dyno roller speed, and that was 6 gear, which is the 1-to-1, and this has a 373 in it, so it's got a really short gear for this 8 HP trans. But again, it is what it is. That's how we bought the car. It is a little kind of not really. It's kind of a mismatch in my eyes. I mean, a Hellcat comes with like a 308 gear, I think. Stuff with these 8 and 10 speeds usually have a pretty low numerically gear ratio, really tall gear for the rear end, just because the first 2 gears is, first gear is very short. I think it's like a 4 something ratio. So there's no need for a short rear end ratio like that. But anyway, something isn't set up right in the trans module, so it does not have a Dodge trans module in it. It's got a aftermarket PCS is the brand, and it's a setup from another company that kind of puts it together for these guys. So that'll have to fix after I get it off the dyno. Because he's not going to be able to, the speed limiter is like hard coded at like 255 miles an hour. He's not going to be able to drag race it if he ever wants to take it to the drag strip on a sticky tire. This car is going to trap more than 125 miles an hour at this kind of power level. So I'll talk about this throttle. So you can see this green line here. That's the actual throttle blade. So you can see I'm not opening it all the way until 4,500 RPM. Again, it was down here, and you can see where the timing is, and you can still see it's nibbling the knock sensors a little bit still. 2.5 degrees of timing. If I was allowing the throttle to open all the way down here at 2,500, the timing was negative. It just would not take any timing. So I actually ended up with a little bit more torque and power down here by just lowering the throttle, lowering the boost. And again, I could have probably done that with a supercharger bypass, but that's kind of a more three-dimensional table, and I figured this is a little bit easier to dial in this way. Timing, yeah, so I'm, it's still nibbling the sensor here a little bit, so I might even pull a little more throttle, but you can see how low the timing is here. And these Hemis don't take much timing, especially on pump gas. That's kind of a typical thing when you start leaning on, boost-wise. And this being a 10-to-1 motor, with the boost we're seeing, I was trying to be safe on it. Realistically, we could probably put a 3.6 or 3.7 pulley on this thing. It might cut a little bit of the power on the top end. We might lose, 15 or 20 horsepower up top, but we'd be able to get more of the throttle in, and it might not be so jumpy too. I got the throttle pretty tamed down on it. and the drivability is actually really good on this now. It was pretty erratic coming off a stop. You barely could touch the throttle and it would spin the tires, and it was kind of a mess. So, and that was just a lot of it's that bigger throttle body. So, yeah, so timing, I was able to get some timing in the top. I'm being kind of conservative because we are hitting, now we're, while I'm revving it out here, I was just saying 16, that's closer to 17 pounds of boost here. So we are seeing some decent boost out of this for pump gas and 10-to-1 compression. So I'm being conservative on the timing. I was able to ramp some of the timing in up top here, but I really wasn't comfortable going much over 15 degrees. As you can see, that's about all I'm going to hit on this thing. And that's where I wanted to stay, just in case, again, there's 93 in it, but if he does want to put 91 in it, 91 is going to run even less timing. So, or maybe right about this up top. Down here, because we are even nibbling knock sensors on 93, I'll probably have to take a little more timing out or just pull the throttle back even a little more and try to soften this down here. But we're going to sit down and talk more about this car. He wants to do some more stuff to it, and I'm just kind of getting it so he can drive it. He hasn't even really driven the car on the street yet. He's had it for a little while, and he's just had it in and out of some different shops, and sounds like he's kind of had a little bit of a runaround on it, and he just wants to be able to drive it. So right now that's what we're doing. We're getting it drivable so he can cruise it around and enjoy it. As it sits on those BFG radial TAs, it spins the tires. I had it out before I had it on the dyno, and you start rolling in the throttle, and half throttle at 80 miles an hour, it's spinning the tires. So we're really we're really after drivability on this thing to cruise it around and have some fun, not so much to light the drag strip on fire with this thing right now, or the street on fire. So yeah, so far, again, I think we could probably up the pulley size, but for now, this is good. This is safe. I know he has access to. He's been a drag racer for a long time, and he has access to higher octane fuels, and he wasn't opposed to even putting a little unleaded race fuel like 100 octane, mixing that into the tank just to keep things safe. So we had talked about that before too. So we'll have a little discussion on whether he's going to do that or we're going to switch the pulley out. I think we could just jump up to like I said, like a 3.7 upper from that 3.5, pull a couple pounds of boost out of it, and we could bring the throttle in a little more down here, and we could probably bring a couple more degrees of timing in up here, and we'd probably be pretty close. We might lose 10 wheel, maybe, like I said, 15 wheel, something like that, but again, it's not going to make it, we're splitting hairs here on a build like this. So air fuel ratio on these. So the Hellcats, and I don't know if I've done a Hellcat on this channel yet. I've done them in the past. At other places I've worked at for tuning. Done several of them, quite a few. Hellcats, Trackhawks, all that Mopar stuff. I've done lots of Mopars in the past. The Hellcats are a strategy similar to how Ford does it with, like a C8 modern GM with wideband. So these do have widebands where like a 392 or a 5.7 Hemi does not. The Hellcats are specific to that on the Mopar platform, on the V8 platforms, where they have widebands, and they run closed loop at wide open throttle under power enrichment. So, which is awesome. I love having that feature. So I am commanding 0.79 lambda. I think that comes out to like 11.6 or 7. I was saying 11.5, but off the top of my head, if you're talking in a gasoline scale, I believe it's like a 11.7. If you're talking a E10 scale, I think it's 11.5. So that's what I'm commanding. That's where I was happy. 0.79 is where I'm commanding. So this is similar to like how Ford does it. So where it uses the fuel trims, the short-term fuel trims, to trim the fuel under wide open throttle. Long terms will zero out, and it will use the short-term fuel trims, similar to, again, to like a Coyote platform, to trim the fuel. So if you watch these, I have them pulling pretty much the whole time. They might kind of float around a little bit there. Maybe they just added a smidge. Pulling, zero, pulling. So I had that pretty close. So the other thing that's interesting about this, and we'll switch gears and we'll talk fueling here, or talk fueling, we'll switch gears and talk about the tunes more. Unlike most of the Dodge strategies, this from Dodge or Mopar Performance does not use the neural network. So because this Hellefant 1,000 horsepower setup, they didn't have VVT on those motors, from my understanding. I have not tuned a Hellefant crate engine. But my understanding, those do not have, they have, you know, that they're 1,000 horsepower rated. They have the bigger blower on them. My understanding is they have like a Mopar Performance fixed cam, so they did not use the neural network, which makes this a lot easier to tune because I do not have to go through the neural network trainer with HP tuners. Super powerful feature from HP tuners, that utility they have on their website, but it is super time consuming to tune because you have to go through, and if you have a VCT cam that's moving, that, you know, retards as you RPM it, there's multiple multiple tables that you have to change in this editor they have, and then you have to run it through their server. You have to send a tune to them, wait 10 seconds, they send it back, load it in, make change, and it's very, very time consuming. You'll spend a day plus tuning a VE table, you know, driving it, dynoing it, you know, it's very time consuming. So a lot of guys will just turn the neural network off, which can introduce other drivability issues, and then you have to go back and change some of the driver demand stuff and go back over the timing tables. And it's, no matter which way you kind of dice it, when you're dealing with neural networks, it's very time consuming. This had it off. This strategy had it off default. So it was already using the VE tables, and that makes it a lot easier. So then you just end up with a standard kind of speed density table, which is a lot easier to tune than the neural network. So yeah, obviously, you know, with the camshaft, I had to make a lot of changes to this table. These tables, each bank has its own VE table, and I always just make them the same. You could see, you know, when you're watching those O2 sensors kind of scroll across, they were pretty close to each other, maybe a few percent off. And that was close enough for what I thought was close enough when you're within a couple percent. So yeah, basically this just tunes in like any other VE table on a, you know, on a GM, or yeah, like a GM style, or like a standalone with a map sensor. So yeah, this is, you know, I had to make quite a few changes to this to get the fueling right. I had to add about 10-12% up in the top end here. It was very lean. It was adding about, yeah, like I said, about 12% in the top here, near peak torque. So my understanding, it was dynoed that way at one of the other shops it was at. He had said the tune that was in it was the tune they dynoed it on, which is kind of scary. Again, luckily this will automatically adjust the fueling, but I don't know, who knows where the timing was. I had to make quite a few changes to the timing tables too. And yeah, so other things you have to change, like, you know, with the throttle, I do some changes to the throttle airflow with the big throttle over a stock throttle body. A lot of changes on the Dodges. They're kind of like more like tuning it's kind of a mixture like between a Ford and a Chevy, where some of the stuff is like Ford, some of the stuff is like Chevy. They're definitely kind of their own animal for sure, especially when you're doing the neural network. Well, the newer GMs, 2019 and up trucks, and the C8 Corvettes use neural network. So they use kind of a similar deal. But yeah, these are kind of their own animal, and multiple timing tables, part throttle tables, wide open throttle tables. I don't know, I've talked about some Dodge stuff before on the channel, but don't know if I've ever gotten into Hellcat stuff. I don't think I've done a Hellcat on this channel, so kind of the first time here, and it's a super cool car to be tuning this platform on. Yeah, so again, variable camshaft. This is a locked cam. There's no VVT. This is just a fixed cam, so that's all shut off. Kind of a goof. Yeah, there was some other stuff in this crate engine Elephant deal that was kind of specific to it, but kind of neat seeing some of the upped torque management and driver demand stuff that they had right from Dodge. You know, kind of neat to see some of the stuff that they just did automatically that you normally kind of have to do when you do like a pulleyed Hellcat with headers and stuff. So yeah, that kind of wraps it up for this. I don't know how much longer, how much more of this I want to get into. You can make a 2-hour video on Dodge strategy, and we don't go quite that in depth on this channel, but I just like to kind of go over some of the stuff with you guys and show you guys a little bit of this process. Some of the stuff that's a little easier, I can go over tables and what I'm changing, but this would, if I had to go through all the stuff, it would take a little bit of time, and we're just kind of outlining stuff here so you can kind of see where I'm setting stuff, timing, setting fuel, some of the little tricks I do. But yeah, this one turned out really nice. Drives really nice now. It is also weird with this one because the trans is a separate OBD2 plug. So there's an OBD2 plug here, And then there's an OBD2 plug over here for the transmission. Kind of caught me off guard. I didn't know why there was two. I thought maybe one was just for the Dakota Digital, and I was trying to read the engine ECU out of this one, and it wasn't working. And I figured that out eventually. And then I had spoken with the guy at that sets these wiring systems up with the PCS controller for these Mopars, and yeah, he kind of reaffirmed that for me. So yeah, that'll wrap it up for this one for now. I obviously have some other stuff to change on, get the speedometer so his speedometer is accurate, because right now, it's when you're going 40, it's reading 80, and it's about double. So something's either off in the gear and tire settings for rotations per mile, or the rear gear, or something is off in the tooth count on the output shaft. But nice curve. I really, obviously these Whipples always, no matter what engine they're put on, what V8 they're put on, they produce that nice, flat, broad torque curve, and makes for a fun car to drive with burnouts readily available at any point. But yeah, again, guys, that'll wrap it up for this one. Really appreciate you guys watching our channel. And I got a Corvette, a Mustang coming down the line here, so that's going to be up next. And thanks for watching, guys. We'll talk to you guys later.